And we're recording. What's up? Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we got Frog Machine, and you're uploading this on your channel too, so I'll introduce myself too. I'm Garrett Mayer. Both of us are Objectivist YouTubers. Hell yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit, or?
Sure. For the people who don't follow me or don't know me on Twitter or anything like that, I'm Frog Machine. I have a new channel called Frog Machinery. I recently came out of my swamp to start talking for various reasons. And yeah, I'm an objectivist. I've been one for quite a long time now. And yeah, it's fun to have a conversation going. So
Very good stuff.
how's the US today?
Uh,
That's a good way to start things off.
Politically fucked, but I mean, I'm doing good right now. I'm a lot of good people around. I mean, as long as you don't pay too much attention to the politics stuff, is usually pretty good.
Yep.
How's Japan going?
Cold and miserable,
Cold
but
and
nice.
miserable.
Yeah.
I'm
It's a politically passive country with badly insulated houses, so I'm freezing to death every day. I wake up like I'm in Dracula's mausoleum, but nonetheless, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I've been dealing with a lot with like the cold lately because I'm up in Nebraska right now, and we just got railed with snow. People were expecting a snow day, but I mean, it wasn't. I didn't think it was that bad, but
Yeah.
so we could talk a little bit about we're probably going to talk a little bit about like psychology and stuff like that because that's something that I think we're both fairly interested in.
Yep.
I know your first video you made was in response to my video about empathy, which was I felt pretty proud after that. I mean, just getting somebody
Cool.
like you're like a very clear, articulate thinker. Just from reading, I've seen
Thank you.
I read your one on like the morality of pornography after you mentioned that, and after that DDV podcast that I was on, and
Yep.
yeah, that was like, it's very well written. You're well spoken. I'm like, it's great to see you on YouTube and getting your ideas.
Oh,
out
thank
there.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you. I appreciate the compliments.
for sure. One thing I wrote down, I watched your perfectionism video this morning. And I was just thinking about different things with regards to that. And one thing that you talked a lot about like doubt and its relationship to its relationships to like self-esteem in the video to some extent, from what I remember. Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. And I noticed like with regards to perfectionism, like especially when I got on YouTube early when I was trying to record stuff, I would like start and stop and start and stop and start and stop just because every time I'd start it'd be like, oh, there's this one little 3-second pause, and I mean eventually you just have to like keep the context in mind and just get something out there.
Yeah, like perfectionism is a really common phenomenon among a lot of people, and it's because of it somewhat stems because the one thing I didn't go into on the video was about where it comes from and how we actually create that kind of conditioning in us where we need to be perfect about everything. And I think it does stem a lot from like the educational systems and how they function, because it's a lot of pass-fail kind of binary systems where it's like you either pass, you either fail, that's it. And if you're average, well, you just kind of coast on through passively, right? But if you want to achieve something, you don't really have much of a chance to get like a decent mark and still go forward, and then the teachers would encourage you. And I don't know what your experience is with education, but generally I find a lot of teachers, they don't really encourage you to keep going. They just kind of chastise you for not doing well enough and that you need to study harder. Or like you do badly, and they're like, yeah, well, if you studied harder, you would have achieved more. And that kind of attitude really, it implies that you need to get it bang on the first go, and that you just need to work harder to get to that point. And it kind of conditions you into thinking that you need to get things right perfectly, and if you don't do it well, you chastise yourself over it. It's like, well, I should have worked harder, and it reduces you down to a person who can't really appreciate the present moment of where you're at. Like, presently, you're doing well, and the question that you need to ask yourself after it is like, what needs to be done next? How do we get to the next stage of our lives, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So,
And I think, yeah, I mean, you're someone who is a teacher, right? You wrote like a book about something, or I don't remember what it's about, but like teaching English to Japanese students, correct? I don't
Right.
know too much about.
I'll summarize it. Like it was originally just a thesis. Like I was just writing my own little thing on. I was moving objectivist epistemology and applying it practically to like language teaching, TESOL in particular, teaching English as a second language. And I just ended up writing a book because I was writing. I was like, oh wow, I'm like 58 pages into this. Why not? I'll just publish it as a book. So I did that, and it is about the first section goes into like how the culture in Japan doesn't really promote a culture of actually learning and properly forming concepts. It's very collectivist and all that, and how that can cause problems. And then the second part is foundations of language and where it comes from and how we build up from it. And then the third part is just applying some creative activities that you can use in a teaching environment. So yeah, like I work with education a lot. I work full time, and it's fun because I enjoy working with kids, but it's also very frustrating because I notice a lot of annoying habits and just a lot of things which piss me off, and I have to maintain my patience. So
Yeah, for sure. With like the system, or that the biggest thing, like systematic type things, or cultural?
yeah, I mean, it's infuriating because like there's a saying. Just I can go on and on about Japanese culture really, but they're very collectivist here, and the way I mean by that is in the culture itself. There's a saying. I can't remember the exact phrasing in Japanese, but in English it basically means the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. Yeah, it's pretty easy to understand what that implies. So, like, I noticed that students... I mean, I'll give an example. I remember a student who is half New Zealander, half English. So his English is quite good. And I remember he did, like, a speech, and I passed him on it because he was really good, and I praised him for it. And the teacher that I was with after the lesson was over, she was commenting on, like, the other students, and then she was like, oh, yeah, that half kid, like, he was good, but... he thinks he's too good. He needs to not be like that. He shouldn't be that good. And I'm thinking, wait, are you suggesting that he should actually lower his standards in order to make others feel better about themselves? I mean, what you're saying here is basically making an enemy out of me. Yeah, that actually borderline ruined my day that day. I was infuriated. So that's the kind of things you deal with.
That's definitely the case. The more and more I like get into objectivism, the more and more I realize like how important it is to like cultivate pride in yourself and like feel like you are worthwhile, like you can achieve things and you can like it's basically that you're deserving of life essentially, and that you can achieve. I guess when I look at like a lot of other philosophies, like, I mean, I came from religion, and they would essentially use God to replace pride, essentially. That was one thing that I noticed when talking to religious people. They would say, like, how do you feel like your life is valuable without some higher power? And, I mean, for me, that was, like, a simple answer. It's just a pride in myself. Like, I'm deserve to live. I can achieve. But, like, with religion, they have such a low view of man that they don't think that that's possible.
Yeah, so... what religion were you raised in?
I was a Catholic.
Okay, so Catholic, that's more like the hardcore Christianity style, isn't it? I'm not that familiar with
to an extent. There's definitely a big dichotomy in Catholicism that I even noticed when I was very involved in it. You have like the Augustinian types and the Thomistic types. And the Augustinian types are very focused on like prayer and not thinking about God, not questioning him. And well, the Thomistic types are a lot more focused on rationality and like trying to like putting reason before God essentially, but still like focusing on God, but trying to like discover him through reason in a sense. And I was, I guess, lucky enough, probably not lucky enough, because I definitely had both at the time. But I definitely got way more into the Thomistic side because I was like constantly involved on like, I'd go in like these Facebook discussion groups and talk about like religion with people and like argue against atheists and crush the atheists with arguments and stuff like that. And it was pretty cringy, but it was what it was. At least I wasn't like one of those like obsessed with prayer religious people, because there were definitely those people. I remember when I was religious, I would like I had another friend who was somewhat similar to me. He's still religious today, but we would like look at like different people from this like other side, I guess, basically, and like it'd be like these people aren't really living living the faith correctly or something. Like it was like these people aren't living on earth, essentially. I don't remember the specific conversations, but I think that's the essence of what it is.
Okay, so like you would argue back and forth with other tribes of Christianity and Catholicism, and then argue against the atheists, and you would crush them with facts and logic based on mystical premises without realizing it. Yeah. So did you find that when you adopted things like objectivism and egoism, did you find difficulty adjusting to things like taking pride in yourself and other aspects like that, or was that like an easy transition?
I mean, that was like the initial transition, I think. I think that was like what sparked me to objectivism. Like the first thing that I read as an objectivist was like the Fountainhead, basically the main premise that had led me to be as Catholic as I was this idea of like man is incapable of achieving on his own, so we need my conception of what happiness was love, and then I had this weird misconception about what love was, being that you sacrifice yourself to another and receive happiness from other people, and then ultimately that you like have to receive eventually from some like platonic perfect other who gives you like the ultimate form of love. But I mean I ultimately found that to be flawed, and I wasn't achieving happiness that way. So I had to replace it basically with objectivism and a view of man as a heroic being, essentially.
Okay. So it wasn't that hard to transition over. Like, did you have any?
It was
the
tough.
reason I asked this
definitely
is
tough, but
it was tough.
Was
it
tough.
more like an emotional thing?
To an extent, there was. I don't know. There was definitely like emotional connection there because there was definitely like friends and family that I had to not leave behind, but like. There's a lot of friends that I made from that I don't really talk to anymore, and there was a little bit of problems with my family afterward. Like, I didn't want to go to church and stuff like that.
Right.
And I guess the hardest part for me was like at the very end when I was trying to like get rid of the like deistic position that there's like some God who like started the universe. But that was just rationality of it in the end. But yeah. Yeah. When did you get into objectivism? How old are you now, and when did you get into it? I'm 18, and I got into objectivism probably. It was probably about 2 years ago that I picked up the Fountainhead, and then I considered myself
the malleable time.
And then I probably would have started considering myself an objectivist when I was 17, the next summer, basically. I finished the Fountainhead, and I started watching a lot of like Charles Two's videos, and he basically like eliminated God from or religious thinking from my mind, essentially. If that's a good way to explain it, but
yeah, Charles is or was, because he's not around anymore in terms of videos, but he's somewhat of like a hammer. When it comes to objectivism, he's the sledgehammer that just shatters a lot of premises, and he does it harshly. Yeah. So yeah, for a younger mind, because I do have an idea, like a formulation where the younger you are, the easier you are to adopt new ideas, because there's not as much content integrated into you already. So someone like that, just hammering you out, just going, "Nut, Catholicism is dishonest." You know how he does that. It'd be a great way to just kind of break through that. So
yeah, I think there's definitely some merit to the younger mind sort of thing, because you have it like integrated all this stuff into your subconscious as much from like this negative perspective. I hadn't like completely put Catholicism in its place in my subconscious, so it's a lot easier, I guess, to clear it and introspect and find that my premises are wrong, because there's a lot less clutter, I guess. It's a lot easier to find like specific things, I guess.
Yeah, clutter is a good word to use it, because so my personal upbringing, like I had a great mum. Like my mum was great, because one of the things that she said to me when I was really young, which basically not concretized, but cemented atheism into me was I asked her when I was young, "Do you believe in God?" And her response was not yes or no, but she looked at me and she goes, "I believe in my own hands." And that's a wonderful little thing to say to a kid, because it's an implicit sense of I work with what I've got, you know, like I believe in my capability. So that kind of cemented that for me. But there were other factors in my childhood which were pretty nasty, and I had a lot of anxiety when I was young. And I was in my 20s when I got into Objectivism and other philosophies. And oh man, like getting through some of the hurdles that I went through in regards to integration and stuff. And I still kind of work with myself on a lot of things. That's part of why I'm moving into counseling in the long term, because I want to help people who go through those things. I want to help people kind of crack open all those deep-seated emotional scars and subconscious integrations. And it's tough. Like, the older you get, the harder it is to break through that calcification. It's a lot of work. So the younger you are, and the more clear-headed you are, and the better thinkers you have out there, like giving you ideas on how you could live your life, and you're the commander of your own ship. It's great. Like, it provides a lot of hope for the future as well. Young minds kind of being enlightened and going, "Hey, I'm capable of so much more," and it's a wonderful thing to see.
Absolutely. What would you have considered yourself before you found Objectivism?
Ooh, that's a good question. When I was in my 20s, it was more just I didn't really care about anything. I didn't have any explicit philosophical understandings at the time, but I was always interested in it. But the thing about me was, like, I had a lot of people around me who put me down a lot. They kind of kept me quiet and kept me shut down. And I mean, on a personal level, like, even making the videos that I started making, there was this unusual contradiction in my own psyche where I would recognize that I released these videos and a lot of people were coming out saying, "This is awesome. Like, these are really good videos." But my brain was like, "Hold on. My entire life I've been told by so many people that I'm worth nothing. So what's going on here? This is not what I actually understand the world to be." Like, that my subconscious was just kind of colliding with the facts. So that took some time to get used to. And when I was younger, I was kind of whatever, just living my life, a bit of a hedonist, I guess, very materialistic. And then I got into the reason I got into philosophy was I got into dieting because I wanted to get fit, I wanted to get stronger, and I went down the, what was it, like a red pill kind of path, because I was angry. I was angry with a lot of the crap that was fed to me when I was younger, and I decided, I want to build myself, become strong, kind of a stoic in a sense. So I went into like a stoic pathway. Then I realized that was wrong. It was also, I also became kind of hedonistic and stoic at the same time, so it was all mishmash of crap. And then I remember in my mid-20s, I remember reading, "The man who does not value himself cannot value anything or anyone." And I was like, who the fuck wrote that? It was Ayn Rand. And I was like, I've heard of her. I've heard of her before, and I am very interested in what that means, because that really struck a chord for me, because I had some self-esteem issues when I was young. I was very altruistic in some sense. Always nice to people. Never really kind of put my boundaries up and went, what's in it for me, So that hit me, and I lived by that quite strictly in my mid-20s. And then I read The Virtue of Selfishness, and I just applied it. I read it, and I was like, done, applied. And I guess from that point on, I was basically like practicing objectivist principles without really explicitly realizing it. And then I really sunk into the philosophy on a technical level late 20s, when I started I read through The Fountainhead, I read through Atlas Shrugged. Those were remarkable books. Fountainhead in particular I really liked. And then I went through Objectivist Epistemology, which I don't recommend to beginners or anything like that. That book is dense. It's very dense. Read through it, and that was when my brain just clicked. Everything just clicked into place, and I was like, I get it. I just get it. And I started immediately after epistemology. I started writing my book because I wanted to apply the theory into practice, because I think that's a great way to actually learn things. And yeah, that was basically it. And then I slowly started coming out. God, it sounds like I'm saying I'm coming out as gay. It's like I'm coming out, man. But it's like I started going into Discord servers. I started chatting to other objectivists, and people were like, "Yo, you're pretty good at this. You seem to know your shit." And again, that contradiction of like, but my whole life people were telling me I was shitty and I should shut up and this and that. So that contradiction it's a work in progress, because my emotions still kind of come up. It's a bit bizarre because of my younger years. But yeah, I that's how I went with it, and it's been good so far, It's a very valuable philosophy to follow, because it doesn't necessarily tell you how to live. It guides you to the life you can have based on what you value. Like, I don't like to, as I mentioned in one of my videos, I don't like to tell people how to live. It's like, you should lose weight. No, you lose weight if you want to, because I can't tell you it's good for you. I can provide you with facts, but you have to make the decision to lose weight based on those facts yourself. It's a guidance thing more than anything, I find.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a lot of good stuff in there.
Thank you.
One thing that I definitely could relate to in my early years is definitely the whole struggle with like self-esteem sort of stuff. I think, I mean, obviously that came from some of my like religious perspective and religious background because of what I went into before about the whole idea of man not being capable. Oh shit, the lights went off. Hold up, I'm gonna turn the lights on. Oh, they turned on.
No worries.
Motion sensitive. All right.
Don't have self-esteem. That's God telling you. Don't do it.
Oh, and then I guess that whole self-esteem issue made me, like, I was a very like introverted, not wanting to talk to people, like keep to myself.
Right.
Didn't feel like I had anything to say, I guess, or feel like anyone would ever want to listen to me in that basic thing. I would just, I don't know, to an extent, there's still some aspect of that still impacts me today, because I am very much someone who, in group conversations, I like to just sit back and just let other people talk, listen, be fairly passive.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely Objectivism has improved that in my life regarding like just speaking out more. Just the whole idea of not being second-handed, that was very important for me. Like, don't care what other people think about what you say, just say it, let it out. And I mean, that definitely has made me a lot more friendships, made me a lot happier in general, and improved my speaking quite a bit.
Yeah, it's somewhat of a paradox as well, because you are taught all your life that be kind to people and let them say their thing, and don't be too pushy. Don't show who you really are. Don't show what you really think, because that's how you make friends. That's kind of what we're taught in a lot of ways. It's the sharing is caring mentality, all that bullshit. And then you come out and you assert yourself, and it's like terrifying at first. It is actually terrifying when you're stuck from that be nice all the time to asserting yourself. I remember the first time I ever did it. And I was terrified out of my mind. It's like, oh, what if this person, like, I like this person. What if they just say, nah, fuck you, man, I'm out of here. But it ended up having the opposite effect. They started to respect me a lot, and they became a good friend of mine. But on the other hand, you notice this is a great way to weed out bad people, or rather people who are not within your values. Because if, for example, you have close friends and you suddenly start asserting yourself, and then they become kind of intimidating towards you, or they, try to doubt you, that subtle kind of doubting where they're like, oh yeah, I mean, I get your point, man, but maybe you shouldn't think that way. Maybe this, maybe that. They just try to seep in that poison, that doubt, to just kind of seep into your mind to get you back down. That's when you realize, like, this person isn't in my best interests. This person is actually, maybe they don't explicitly know it, but they're implicitly manipulating you in that sense where you're just being kept down. And it's like, well, no, I'm the master of my ship. I say whatever the fuck I want, and I think whatever the fuck I want. If you don't like it, stiff, And yeah, it's it's an amazing like difference because you make much more valuable and much more enriching friendships based on being assertive, because you really find people who connect with you on a much deeper level. And I mean, I believe it was Aristotle who said it, like a friend is basically like an other self. They mirror you in a lot of ways, like you have complementary values, and those values you reflect back on each other, and it's like a bonding in a way, and it's similar to like romantic relationships, but on a different level. So
yeah, no, it's very similar to romantic relationships. It's actually something that when thinking about romantic relationships a lot, I think like, or I guess it applies to friendships in general too. Just I would rather be alone than be with somebody that I can't be my completely authentic, honest self with. And that's definitely something that I think about a lot. I guess it might be a little too personal, but like in a last relationship, I felt like I couldn't be myself with somebody, and but I was really like broken after it, I felt like. But then afterward, I like immediately, just to cope with that sort of thing, would just tell myself, no, it's better to be alone than to be with somebody that you can't be yourself with. And that's kind of how I guide myself now, so that I don't feel like lonely due to the fact that I'm single, basically.
Oh.
Hold
on a minute. Okay, yep, it's back to normal. Good. Just pause for a second. Yeah.
It's pausing again.
In particular. Wi-Fi is crashing a little bit. Okay, it's fine now.
It should be good.
All right, all good. No, it's important when dating to meet someone who meets your standards, and it's really important to remember it's your standards. And I've noticed, I'm not going to mention names or anything like that. Like, I've had people ask me questions regarding dating and regarding like meeting new people and finding someone nice. And it's lovely when you find someone nice. The person I'm with now is someone I've been with for almost 2 years now, and I met her at work unexpectedly after something bad had happened. It was just a completely unexpected thing, but I recognized
always unexpected.
It's always unexpected.
That's good.
So don't, like, actively looking is good. Be active about it, but don't be hyper-focused on finding someone, because if you're hyper-focused on finding someone, that's an indication that you're relying on them to be happy. You shouldn't be doing that. You should be working on yourself and building something great inside of you, and then you'll find someone who'll notice that, and then they'll go along with you on the journey. And that's what happened with me. And I remember meeting her, and it was just her mannerisms. Something about her like had a spark, like a fire in it. And I was like, I'm going to ask her out. So I did next time I saw her, and we hung out, and it was just like magic. It was great. So like, yeah, the dating thing, you have to have someone who shares a lot of the values you have, the deepest values. Things like, if you deeply value honesty, that's really important. Like hobbies, who gives a fuck? Like, my partner hates video games, which is fine. Like, she's like, games are boring. I was like, cool, whatever, you know, it's fine. But we watch some stupid movies together, or we go hiking together, and also I can look at her and go, I rely on her for my deepest, most important traits. And that's what you want with someone. You don't want like, I want someone to share my hiking journeys with. It's you can find hiking groups anywhere. That's fine. It's just a hobby. So,
yeah, that's definitely true. I think there is an extent to which something like that would be nice, though, because I remember, I don't know, this summer I was biking with my friends at like 5 a.m, and I saw like this couple like bike past us, and we were like all biking all the way around. Like, we have like a 20-mile bike trail in my hometown, Sioux Falls.
Oh, nice.
And there's just like 5 a.m, we're all just, me and my friends are just biking to see the sunset, and this couple rides by, and I'm like, this is like that. I looked at that and I'm like, holy shit, I want to do that someday. But I mean, yeah, but you're definitely right on the whole point that like you want to have someone who shares your like spiritual values, like your deepest values, more importantly.
Yeah, and I mean, finding someone who cycles with you, like you saw that and you were like, holy shit, I'd love to have that. That's you recognizing something that you really cherish, and finding someone who has that is valuable. Like, I'm not saying don't find people with nothing in common in terms of hobbies. Like, things in common usually relate to deeper values. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be all things. It's not that platonic thing like we're
Yeah.
soulmates and everything is intertwined, right? So it's you notice that. And by the way, are you a roadie, road cyclist, or mountain?
I've mostly done road, but there's a little trail in like there's like this woodland park sort of place where it's like a lot of mountain biking. I've done it like 2 or 3 times. It's pretty scary, but I've fallen down a couple times.
Cool.
But it's very fun.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because I'm a cyclist. I cycle to and from work all the time, up like the mountains here. So I've been doing that for years, and I don't have a mountain. I've got a cross bike. They call it crosses here. They're hybrids. So I've got a hybrid, and I do like cycling up trails and stuff.
Yeah, I have a mountain bike. I think I don't know too much about. I don't know. I bike all the time, but I don't like know too much about a lot of stuff related to biking.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
No worries.
I did get involved in this one cycling thing this one morning at like there's like this morning biking thing at my college at like 5 a.m. where we go to like those trails I was talking about when it's like completely dark out, and we bring like flashlights for the front of our bikes, and it was a crazy experience. It was like completely dark. You just see all you see is like every few seconds like the light flash. It was a fun experience. I loved it. And yeah, other than that, I like bike. Well, not right now because it's so cold out, but I would usually bike I just do like bike routes around the city for like 15-mile routes or something like that, just to exercise.
Nice. Yeah, I do a lot of work rides, and I once went up a mountain. There's a road that goes up to another town, which is 30k away, because I live in a small town in Japan. And I went up there with my friend once, and we went halfway, and we realized we were like, it was like an 800-meter elevation or something like that. We were like way up in the mountain, and it's a really narrow forest pathway. And I was like, let's go back down, because I don't know where we're going. So we ended up going back down, and it was the most terrifying ride because it's a narrow pathway, and it's a really steep decline. And I was doing like 70k on twirly, like these spirally roads, and I'm like, yeah, cool. If I make a single error, I'm dead. So this is exciting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I burned like half my damn brakes on that day.
Oh, yeah.
Burned through it, yeah.
It sounds pretty fun. I don't know, that just sounds fun to me too, but that sounds
it's great.
Very scary. I would try to get as high as speeds as I possibly could when I would go down hills. I think I hit like 30 miles an hour once, but that was...
it's scary stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how this segued from like finding a woman to like more important things like a bike.
Yeah.
Because it's acquire bikes, not women. Bikes are great.
Yeah. Bikes are my highest spiritual value.
Yeah, bikes are the way to go. Like bike objectivists, it's all about the bikes.
For sure. What else is there to talk about? Should I move on to something?
Go for it.
We hit a lot of the topics that I had written down, actually. I had like religion, religious psychology, stuff like that. One thing that I don't remember specifically, but I have the word regret written down. And I think I thought of that after watching your perfectionism video. And just cause like, I don't know, regret is something that I definitely have like a lot of mental struggles with. Just the whole, but I like understand how bad it is. And how negative, like, just the idea of dwelling on something that already happened, is already in the past is. And I know there's a lot of very negative psychological consequences of that. Like, if you go and, like, let's say you see a cute girl and you, like, are talking to her, and then you're, like, afterward, it's just like, oh, shit, what I said this one thing, and it's just weighs on you. And that's just very, because it leads you to not want to talk to people or not want to take risks or do fun things, I guess.
Regret's a difficult one because the thing about emotions and emotions of value judgments, as we know, regret is based on things that have happened in our past which we weren't particularly proud of, or something that happened, an event which you look at and you go, oh, I wish I did it this way, or I wish I did it that way. And a lot of people ruminate. It's called wheel spinning. They go through the motions again and again over the event, and that's bad. But the actual idea behind regret, I haven't fully thought about regret as a whole, but regret is not inherently bad, because you can use it for a positive purpose. And to explain that, it's like, say, like I have some regrets. I was a bit of a playboy when I was a little younger. I, hung out with a lot of girls for the purpose of the material worth of sex. It was like, yeah, I just want to have sex. There are regrets regarding that, but I don't really have a ruminating aspect to it anymore. And the reason behind it is because the regret is my reminder to where I went wrong in my life. And then I can look at that and reflect and go, how do I avoid doing that again? It's going back into kind of that perfectionist route and the unbreached rationality, because I acknowledge the fact that I've made some errors, but I don't sanction that error and make it define me. Like, because without the errors in the first place, I never would have been able to retrace and get back on the track that I am now. Like, and the thing is that they've happened. There's something that I cannot control. They're out of my control, so I shouldn't feel bad about them anymore. But I can reflect on the actual memories and the regrets that I have and go, where did I go wrong? Why did I go wrong? What led to it? How do I avoid that again? And it's reframing how you perceive your regrets, because a lot of people try to just throw out a lot of the gunk. Like, they try to go, I'm going to throw out my regrets. No regrets. No regrets, And it doesn't really work, because that's essentially repressing an emotion which has a purpose. All emotions have some kind of purpose. Whether the purpose is valid or not, that's a different question, because that's going into someone's psychology. Like, someone who has significant guilt over, say, very easy one, like a lot of young people, they feel guilty about, say, masturbation and sexual intercourse and things like that because of their upbringing. The purpose behind the guilt is to tell them it's wrong, but you can evaluate the judgment behind that and go, okay, it's not wrong because such and such and such. You can logically deduce from reality, or just observe in general, why it's a good thing. And over time, the guilt goes away, and you no longer regret it because the initial premise behind it was invalid. But with something like regret, like a valid regret, you did something, it's a fact that you did it, and you feel terrible about it. It's fine to be regretful of it, but don't allow it to control who you are as a person, but rather look at it, ask yourself the question as to how you got to it and how you can avoid it in the future. That way it's a productive outcome for yourself, because you're utilizing that energy into something positive and into a future prospect in a sense.
Yeah. I like that thing you said about like trying to avoid like ruminating on it, letting it control you. That's definitely like a very clarifying point for me with regret, because the regret is something I definitely think about quite a bit. Just how to like overcome that, and I guess I've tended to have a fairly like just ignore this thing altogether. But I definitely, there's definitely is some point to, there's some point to thinking about it and kind of like disavowing this past act. You have to like take it into your mind and like think about it. You have to deal with it. And then once you can do that, you can basically use it as an example of like, this is the action that I took, and these are the consequences of this action on my emotional state, and like have it as a concrete example of why to avoid that sort of mentality and those sort of actions.
Right.
And ultimately you just grow from it but you can't let it like, once you've overcome it, once you've moved on from it, you can't let it lead to negative emotions in you. You can't really let it lead to like super negative long-term emotions, and you just use it as an example, I guess.
Yeah, this goes into the virtue of honesty, and I really think this is the most important part of the virtues as a whole, because honesty, when people think of honesty, they just think honesty to other people. Be honest to people. But that's in relation to a specific entity, which is another person. But honesty, when you look at it as a concept in a universal sense, means honesty to yourself, honesty to the emotions you feel, honesty to reality, honesty to other people, honesty in the work you do, honesty in the money you earn. Like, it entails literally everything you do. And this also means feeling the things you feel and allowing it to come in. Because there's a therapeutic approach called acceptance and commitment therapy, because I'm studying right now to be a counselor. And this is one of my favorite ones, because acceptance and commitment therapy, part of its whole premise is accepting the feelings you have, or accepting some of the thoughts you have sometimes, but committing to an action and taking action. So it's like, for example, if you have significant anxiety in doing speeches, okay, you're going to have anxiety, especially the first time, because you're doing something new. It's frightening.
Oh, you're cutting out a little bit. All right. It should be good now, I think.
All right. There's a lot of nerves when you're doing something new for the first time. But over time, the more you do it, the less nervous you become, because you become more confident in yourself. You have to act in order to eliminate those emotions. And with the regrets, you have to learn to accept them, but commit to not making those mistakes again, and then take actions to make sure that's true throughout the whole time. But if you make another error in the future, that doesn't mean going back to regrets, well, I'm worthless after all, because that's just, again, that's going into that platonic ideal of being some kind of like a perfect being. And I really do think a lot of people make that error of, like, an unbreached rationality means if there's a single breach, the Titanic sinks, she's gonna sink, sir, and it's all over, But no, that's not how our minds work. That's not how we are as humans. We're fallible beings, and sometimes we can make errors, which, I mean, there's no big deal with making an error as long as you're honest about it and actually, like, moving towards a better life in the future. But it's a problem when someone doubles down, and I know I can name people like active within, say, the objectivist community that I've noticed. It's like they would make an error and they would double down on that shit, and it really backfires on them. It causes destructive things to happen, and it's like, don't do that. You have to introspect and go, okay, what am I feeling? What are the things going through my mind? Where did I make the error? How can I get past that? And that leads into regret as well, because yeah, everyone has regrets. I have a lot of regrets, but it doesn't bother me so much. It's more just, I'm going to get off this damn wheel. I'm just going to move over to build my own wheel somewhere,
Yeah. And I think that whole idea of what you were talking about with, like, honesty, putting it in that broader context, I guess, that's one thing where, like, objectivist ethics is so revolutionary with regards to ethics. It's just, it takes virtue from how you treat other people. It takes it into yourself, how you treat yourself and how you look at reality. And yeah, as you were explaining, I mean, that's the case with just about every objectivist virtue. And it's like that, it just makes every other ethical system just feel so empty. Like, I was listening to, I think it was, I listened to a lot of the Twitch streamer Destiny, but and he's like very much a committed, like, utilitarian pragmatist, that sort of person. And when he talks about ethics, it's very much like, how do we ensure the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest amount of people? And that's utilitarianism, basically. And it's so focused on, like, other people's happiness and, like, this weird, broad, abstract society sort of, weird, broad, abstract sort of, like, conception of society and that sort of thing. And it doesn't, like, take into account, like, his whole morality doesn't take into account individual happiness. How are you going to be happy? I mean, that doesn't take any of that into account. Or how should I deal with reality? It doesn't take anything like that into account. It's just, what sort of system should we put in place to ensure the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest amount of people? And it doesn't really ever take into account, what does it mean to be happy? What does it mean to be good for it? Yeah, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, the problem with people like Destiny and their whole utilitarian premise is based on whose standards. Because the thing about utilitarianism is that it has to be built off someone else's standards. And then that builds from that one person over to a group of people, and then a larger group and a larger group. And the bigger you get, the noisier the outcome is, in the sense that you can't get a concrete thing of what's best for who, and for what, and for when, and for why. Like, it creates so many variables in the situation where, oh, the majority voted this because most people kind of agree with it. It's kind of agree, you know. Mm-hmm. And then there's a small group of people who don't agree. And then the next vote for another issue, well, some people agree with it, these minorities don't. So this is voted in. So it's greatest amount of happiness for the greatest amount of people. But the more you actually concretize that in reality, and the more you apply certain variables to it, like how much do we want to tax? How much of a contentious issue that is to so many different people. You have people like, well, we should do 10%. No, I think 15. No, I think 20. Well, I think 30 because mathematically, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's what creates the political climate we have now, where it's just like constant little tribes popping up all over the place. Like you've got on the right, you've got on the left, you got the right, like the alt-right, the light right, the Shapiro right, the Molyneux right, the geneticist right, the eugenist right. There's all this crazy shit everywhere. And then the left is like, I don't know what the fuck's going on with the left. It's just like a bunch of people eating each other all day, and whatever, like, you guys have fun with that.
Yeah, and ultimately it just comes to a point where nobody's satisfied with the current system, because I mean, when you are in such like a democratic system, I guess, where like everybody can vote on every issue and choose basically everything about another person's life, you just get this like, it's okay. I mean, most people agree with it. Most people kind of agree with it, and you're never actually like striving for perfection, essentially. Or in the objectivist conception, like moral perfection. You're just doing what's okay for most people, or yeah,
it's nonsensical. And when you reduce it down to the primary, which is just an individual, you just go based on an individual, and you go, okay, what's best for an individual, not a particular individual, just an individual. It's like, okay, what do we want to give them? You can go through all the variables. So, well, we'll give them money. No, like, it doesn't work. You know, well, we give them this. No, because how much do they want? There are so many variables in terms of an individual's life, and everyone has such different values, that when you just go down, just let them be free. Let them do what they want to do, as long as they don't harm other people. Mm-hmm. That's it. It's like, oh, well, that solves a lot of problems. Why aren't we getting to that yet? And it's really frustrating because everyone is so focused on, they're so concrete bound on these particular issues. Like, we need to help the poor. And I was like, well, if we want to help the poor, allow them the freedom to not be poor. Because in order for them to not be poor, both spiritually and materially, they need to earn their wealth. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. If you're handed everything to you on a platter, you're not going to be happy. You're never happy because you know subconsciously, or even if you're smart enough and you recognize explicitly, you rely on the hand that feeds you. The moment you bite that hand, it's gone, and you no longer have any of that material wealth, and you never had the spiritual wealth to begin with. And what I mean by spiritual wealth is like self-esteem and things like that. So it's really frustrating. This is why I don't get into politics so much, because I don't give a shit about it anymore. Like, everyone's just so focused on stupid concrete issues that they don't see the essentials. And it's every time I talk to someone, it's like, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? And then you've got like people like Peterson who would come in and it's like, well, you have to work with the community and blah, 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 and take responsibility, accept responsibilities involving blah, blah, blah. Oh, God. Yeah, I get really like amped up over politics. Oh, thank you. But so yeah, it's frustrating how much nonsense is thrown. It's so noisy, and no one actually goes, all right, let's start from the beginning. Mm-hmm. We got to start constitutionally, and we got to build up from those premises. And yeah, I'm kind of passive regarding it all. Like, I just go out, I live my life to the best of my ability, and I build. I think that's the ultimate solution long term, because if you build your life to the best of your ability, it influences other people, not in the sense that you're telling them what's proper and things like that. You're showing them. Like,
Are we good?
influenced by... oh, good. Yeah. A lot of people are...
It's pausing a little bit. All right. I think we're good.
it's getting better now.
Hopefully.
But to finalize that, I guess, like, I guess looking at Rucker.
Oh no, it's really freezing now. Yeah. All right.
Oh, here we go.
It disconnected for a little bit and like reconnected. It's all right. Sometimes it goes really bad, but it's all right. So you started saying something about Rucka and then it cut out.
Yeah. No, Rucker's a great example of someone who shows his happiness and shows his productivity, and it influences other people. Because a lot of people came into Objectivism because of him. And I mean, going into, say, when he was on Ruben's show, it was a really great example of someone who's really passionate about ideas. And you look at his life and you look at the way he presents himself, he seems like a really happy dude. And he's openly talked about how he went from kind of a very hedonistic lifestyle and grew into someone who's great. So none of that was really him going out and politically like fighting the good fight. He went and just everything that he did was shown. It was proven, and those concrete visuals are like, oh, okay, you know. So he's doing something right. What is he doing right? And now he's talking about it, obviously, like objectivism and things like that, and that influences a lot of people. So I think that's the best way to actually change the political climate, by showing and acting and influencing people through your actions. That's my experience with my students. That's my experience with people who like I've spoken to, like some of my closest friends. Just from my actions alone, they've been inspired to change themselves and to grow and things like that. So
yeah, Rucka. Yeah, with Rucka, I mean, he was the one who initially like got me to read The Fountainhead. Just that Ruben appearance, basically. Because I just saw the way, like how passionate he was about The Fountainhead, and like how accurately it seemed like he was describing the political situation. And I think ultimately the biggest problem politically, as like most objectivists are saying, is definitely philosophical. Because every time I get into like, or a group of friends that gets into a political discussion and I'm there, I do definitely occasionally come in, but like just the other night, like last night, people were talking politically, and it was starting to get down into like ethics. And immediately once it got down there, people were like, "Oh, we just have different values now. We're never going to agree on this. We just have different values." And it's like stopped essentially. And I think that is like that, but that's where like stuff changes. That's how you get political change. That's how we get to this like political whatever revolution that objectivists want or whatever. Not necessarily revolution, but whatever. But yeah, and I think ultimately, like when you look at the current political climate, it ultimately like it reduces to this low view of man that most people have. This view that human beings can't be rational, that they can't achieve happiness for themselves, so they need to essentially like have some ruler come in and give them happiness for them, or basically control their lives, or like tell them what to do. Like with poor people, for example, like the issue or the thing you brought up, it's just the idea that like if you said that just let these people achieve for themselves, the politicians would be like, but they can't achieve for themselves. That's not possible. That's essentially the response that they would give, and ultimately like that reduces down to this idea of what is man. Man is a rational animal, and man has the ability to achieve. And I think that is why that's why it's so important what Rand did. Like her whole purpose for writing was to portray man as a heroic being. And I think that is like ultimately the most important thing with regards to politics, because before you can define how men are supposed to interact, you have to define what a man is first, what a human being is first, before you can get into what their nature requires.
Yeah, and it's not even just the definitions, it's also recognizing that man has responsibility for himself. And what I mean by that is that free will and the capacity to act. And politicians, when you reduce it down to that level, they'd be like, well, you know, if we don't help poor people, that means they have to take responsibility. And I mean, what about my votes?
Yeah.
So it's just, there's a lot of an agenda behind it. But it's also the fact that people are afraid of giving individuals responsibility for their actions. Oh, pause.
I'm hearing you still, but yeah, the video froze for a little.
Pause and unpause. Come on.
God, the Wi-Fi is so bad here. I was having similar problems with Kirk when I was recording the other day. It was just terrible Wi-Fi here. I always tend to have problems with it, but what can I do?
Yeah.
This is what I have.
It's all those students uploading their stupid selfies on Instagram or something like that. It's just uploading. But going into what I was saying, it's a responsibility thing. You know, giving people responsibility is terrifying to a lot of people because they have that premise that humans are flawed and incapable and weak, and they're just going to suffer and struggle. But the opposite effect happens when you tell someone that you are responsible for your life and you can achieve what you want. It teaches them to grow up. Hopefully it's not disconnected.
No, that's good. Oh. Do you hear me? Shoot.
There we go.
Right, there we go.
It's back to normal.
Sweet. I think
I was just having a water break.
All right. The last thing I heard was you say something about, I wonder if it's disconnected, and then it just like stopped.
But I was just saying, like, you give people responsibility and you tell them they're capable. It has the opposite effect of what a lot of politicians tend to suggest, which is, man is incapable and they can't take care of themselves. They need someone to help them. It's like, no, you know, when you need help, when you come out and you say, I really, really do need help, then benevolent people will come and help you. That's generally what good, rational, egoistic people do. I'm very compassionate towards people around me, and I'm selfish as fuck. Which to them is paradoxical, but to me it's like, no, it's just natural. I want to see people become kings within their own lives. That's because it's beneficial to me, and it's awesome seeing that stuff. It's inspiring. So giving people responsibility has the opposite effect of what people assume, which is, you know, destitute poverty. But what we realize is, no, you give someone freedom and they become really awesome over time. They have to go through the struggle in order to succeed.
Yeah, and this very much ties into justice. I mean, it's definitely not a contradiction to be selfish and like give people who like by no fault of their own like fell off or something bad happened to somebody, and then you want to help them up, because I mean, as selfish people, we want to see good people succeed. We want to live in a society where good people can succeed. So if someone like falls off, if something bad happens to them, like I would gladly donate some money to them, even as someone or because I'm selfish. But what I don't want to do is set up a welfare system where everybody's money gets taken and given indiscriminately to everybody, including, like as Yaron Brook always says, the wife beating drunk. Like I want charities who can like choose the certain people who they feel got some unjust circumstances and give it to them, rather than just indiscriminately giving it to everybody. Yeah,
it goes into life being life is the standard of value, but you have to choose life because life is conditional. Like, I mean, I've probably messed that up a little bit, but essentially, like, when the money you give to people by your own choice is a choice you made based on specific values. But in terms of the welfare state, the welfare state doesn't set the premise on life is the standard of value, but only if you choose it, and it's conditional. It just goes, human life is the standard, and that's it. It doesn't have any conditional statements behind that, but the reality is that life is the standard of value based on the fact that you choose life, and the moment you choose life is when the concept of value becomes possible. That's like the theory of rights. And we can go into like basically how that's defined from where it comes from. But that's the thing, like, people, it's a conditional thing. Like, when I give money to, say, like, a wife-beating drunk, I'm saying a couple of things there. I'm saying that regardless of the choices you made in your life and the values you choose, even though they lead closer to death ultimately, I'm still just giving you money based on the premise that human life is the standard. It's not. Like, it's life in general is the standard. You have to choose it, and it comes with certain conditions. We're goal oriented, and if someone is going against life and, leading another person to death, I don't want my money going to them. That's completely evil to me. And that's the problem with welfare. Like, it just sets that blanket standard of human life. That's it. Doesn't matter about the conditions. There's no kind of morality in the individual life. It's just collectively human life is good. It's like, no, human life is good based on the choices that humans as individuals make.
Yeah, and I mean, this type of egalitarianism is essentially just waging a war against justice and reality. Essentially, just the fact that your life has objective requirements, and the good people, the people who do good, deserve by justice to achieve good things and to achieve life. And this whole egalitarian sort of charity, which is welfare, but just subverts all that and says, no, whoever you are, you get money, you get to live, just because of egalitarianism, basically, just because of human life matters rather than individual people, individual people achieving based off their own merits or based off their own values, is what matters.
Yeah, it's giving money to someone who doesn't deserve it is a terrible injustice, because you've earned that money honestly, you've built it up, and then it's just taken from you without your consent and given to someone who never earned a single thing in their lives. Mm-hmm. And that's supposed to make me feel good? Why? Why do I want to give money to someone who votes against my life, or, raped a girl or abused a woman or something like that? Like, I don't want to give them money. I want to give them a freaking jail cell. I want to give money to the wardens or the construction site that'll build the jails to keep those people in prison. Mm-hmm. That's what I would put my money to, because that's justice. That person gets that. They get what they deserve. But the whole welfare thing is against reality. It's against the facts. And being an egoist, I don't want to have my money given to people who don't deserve it. I give my money to people who deserve it. I give my time to people who deserve it.
Mm-hmm. And I guess one thing that is always argued by the people who argue for welfare, redistributing money, is this whole idea of these people that we're going to give money to are going to consume more or be more beneficial for the economy than the people that we're taking it from. But it's such a reverse of the actual reality, because these people who make the money are the people who are the ones who are producing the most value and providing the most to the economy. But that obviously shouldn't be the standard, because individual life your individual happiness should be the standard. But the people who are providing the most are the people who may end up making the most money.
Yeah, it's an unusual premise to say, because they go, okay, if we give money to these people, they could stimulate the economy because then they have more spending power. It's like, wait, but that doesn't make sense, because if you just give that money back to the billionaire that you stole it from, they'd just be able to invest that and build 50 times more wealth than the poor guy can, therefore stimulating the economy 50 times more. So that person is worth 50 poor people, but you want to give money to the poor guy who doesn't do anything with it. He just spends it on booze. And that stimulates the economy?
They want to have both.
What's wrong with you people?
They want to have their cake and eat it too. I've never used that phrase before, actually. That's the first time I've actually applied it to something. But yeah, they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to have the billionaires still invest, and they want the poor people to spend it at the same time. And
it's an unusual premise, and it's based on the whole thing that, human life is good. It's a package deal kind of statement on the whole thing. Human life is good. Why? Because it's human life. It's like, well, that's stupid. That's circular, because you need to actually come out with why is life good? What led to the concept of values in the first place? You know, what conditions do you need to meet to acquire values? What conditions do you need to meet to acquire happiness? All these really important questions, which logically lead into egoism and self-interest. But they don't do that. They just base it on like some idea that like human life as a whole is a value. It's like, well, no, like that, what's his name? Quesadilla burrito guy that got blown up by Trump. Salami.
Oh, that guy? Yeah. Qasem
I don't know his name.
Soleimani? That's his last name.
Salami something. Yeah. Whatever. Who cares? But he died. He got blown up. He took a big KO to the face with a ballistic missile, and I'm like, cool, that's awesome. You know, to me it was funny because I was like, but he's a shitty person. Like, why would I, you know, why would I be disgusted or unhappy about things like that? Like, he didn't meet the conditions for living a life in a rational society, so why the hell should I care about him dying? You know. But for them that standard is like, it's just human life with anything like that. So 3, 2, 1.
All right, we're back.
All right.
Little technical difficulties again, but we are back at it. All right, what were we talking about before it paused?
I don't know.
Oh,
I can't remember. It was the Quesadilla burrito guy.
Oh yeah, Qasem Soleimani. I remember his name now.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I
didn't have. I don't know. I struggle with like foreign policy issues, so I don't know too much about like, oh, should we go to war with Iran? I think we probably should. I don't think Trump would do a good job though. That's my only issue.
Yeah. I won't go into it much because I don't really care for geopolitics too much, and it's an area which I'm not that invested in, so I can't really make a proper comment on it. But the fact that he died, I just did not care. It was a case of, cool, what did he do? It's like, oh, he supported people killing ISIS. It's like, okay, what did he do before that? Oh, he supported killing Israelis and other people. Like, oh, okay, so he's just a shit person with like some like one good trait but 20 other like horrible traits. So he's just horrible.
Yeah.
Whatever, who cares?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, you used it in my in the response to that video on empathy, which I thought it was a good example of that, of just that whole principle of like applying empathy and justice together.
Yeah, being sympathetic or empathetic to someone like that, you've got some problems there. You got to really introspect and go, why do I feel empathetic towards a guy who believes it's okay to like murder Israelis or anything like that? That's a really bad premise to own, and you need to really journal on it, introspect, and go, okay, I need to fix that kind of problem I've got.
But isn't it selfish to want to? Oh my gosh! Isn't it selfish to want to?
Is it DCing again?
Why is it doing that? All right, but isn't it selfish to want to just kill people for your own best interest? What if you want to kill people? That's how that.
I don't know. I don't like this one either. It's the.
I hate it when people use that argument.
Yeah, I mean, to answer it, no, because it's always going to be on your conscience. Like, you have a conscience, and you're always going to know you did it. And people would say, but it's in my interest to kill people. Like, it's this constant reductive argument of, but I want to kill people. It's like, well, why do you want to kill people? There's a reason behind you wanting to kill people, right?
Yeah, and I think if somebody has the sort of premises that would lead them to kill somebody in their subconscious, then those are the type of people who can't actually experience real happiness anyways. Because whatever warped pleasure that somebody gets from killing somebody is not the same as like a uncontradictory joy that objectivists talk about. Why does it do that?
technical difficulties.
Oh man. What's that noise?
Oh no, we had you cut out there for like a good 30 seconds, so I didn't hear. You were talking about if someone has like killing someone in their subconscious as a value.
Yeah. So I mean that those are the sort of people that can't really experience real happiness anyways, just because if your mind is that warped so that you experience whatever thrill they get from killing somebody is not the same as the objectivist conception of like uncontradictory joy is happiness. Like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, you can just keep going through that and ask, well, okay, you want to kill someone and killing some other people is valuable to you. Where did you get that premise from? Why do you think that's good? How does that benefit your life? The lag is suffering stage. The life is suffering stage here. Cutouts and disconnects and talking to myself while I wait for this to clear up.
I still hear you. Can you hear me? Oh, we're good.
I can hear you, but you've disappeared. You've reappeared right now.
Oh, there we go. And it's been.
Oh, it's cutting out again. Oh. Your Wi-Fi is.
It's terrible.
Having some.
Connection info. I wonder if I should click debug. Will that do anything or no?
Debug just gives you some information on what may be causing it. I'm guessing it's just an upload thing. Someone is torrenting or uploading something.
Yeah, you never know what people are doing at college.
Yeah. But yeah, you can examine why you'd want to kill someone. Why you think it's good to kill. And you can go deeper into that, and you can eventually go down to core values and belief systems that people own.
Yeah.
And oh man, those can be pretty nasty. It's like, oh, it's because, I want to kill people because it's fun to murder. I take pride and pleasure in it. And it's like, well, why do you take pride and pleasure in it? And it could be from, behavioral conditions, maladaptive things that they've formed in their childhood, trauma. There are people out there who are genuinely murderous and evil, but they don't last long because within a societal context, they expire pretty quickly because as I mentioned before, life is conditional and you have to meet certain conditions, especially in modern society. And this is the weird thing about this, because a lot of people, they bring up like Genghis Khan. They would go like, oh, Genghis Khan was successful. He had sex with like 400 million women. And now, like, his seeds everywhere, his legacy lives on. I'm thinking, well, who cares? He's dead. He's dust. It
just shows that people value like power and money and sex and things like that. Like, I don't get why those are such high values. Like, I mean, if you just want to look at like power, for an example, Adolf Hitler killed himself. Like, I don't think power is that much of a value.
Yeah, he killed himself, and also this is a very materialistic premise. It's only seeing the world just as is and not really thinking about like the spiritual fulfillment of, say, earning your money or getting a really good relationship and having sex with someone you fall in love with genuinely, who reflects your values. And that's something that Objectivism is really good with, in that it puts those things together. It says, well, look, the material world is all that we see. The only thing that exists are things. It's concretes. Nothing doesn't exist. It's a weird thing to say, but it's true. And but there's also the aspect of human consciousness, and how we attain those values is really important, because we can recognize those facts. We form concepts and we can understand, I got this from doing this. Was it a valid way of getting it? Was it honest, and was it something that I earned? And that has a huge difference to someone who's like, I got this woman from buying her on the Iraqi market, and she is my fourth wife, and I feel very good. But those people don't feel very good, because those people still have a religious subset which they rely on as a crutch, because it's like, well, I feel kind of terrible about this, my conscience is this, and I live in this material world and life is suffering and all this crap. but when they die, they go to some heaven where they get 40 virgins or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Reality that they live in. But the reality is that there's nothing beyond death, because you turn to dust. That's it. There's nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is all you have. This is your only life.
You got one shot.
Mm-hmm. That's a good phrase that gets thrown around quite a bit. You only have one life. I mean, that it's good to an extent, but the way that people use it can be really bad, because it's like, oh, I'm gonna do this super self-destructive behavior because you only live once, YOLO. And I just think that, yeah.
Yeah, the one-shot thing tends to be misconstrued from a hedonistic perspective, unfortunately. It's like, you've got one shot, so live it to the max. It's like, okay, so get 400 bitches, you know, but it doesn't work that way, because you're essentially saying that anything will do as long as I get that material pleasure, or the nerve stimulation of having sex and having an orgasm. But the amusing thing about that is the nerve stimulation behind masturbation and sex is essentially the same. Sexual organs are stimulated in the same way, and they have the same reactions. But why is it that sex with someone you fall in love with versus sex with someone you don't love, why is it so different in feeling? And you can actually examine that and go, well, it's because after it, you recognize that there's something inside you, and I can't fully explain that. It's not God, it's some emotional feelings and value judgments. You recognize there's a satisfaction, you earned this, and this person sees you for you in full, both physically and spiritually. While with a hedonistic one, it's like, I had sex and I stimulated myself, and I was with this person, but there's this hollow feeling. It's just this like really empty sensation of, well, what now? You know, is that it? You know, and that's what hedonism does. It devalues everything that really matters in life, and it turns you into like a really empty shell of a person. And the more you do that long term, the more you condition yourself to see it that way, and the more you desensitize yourself to the actual value of sex and all those things that hedonism, you know, chases after. So that you only live once and YOLO stuff, and the way people misconstrue it, it's almost like a retaliation towards oppressive religious beliefs and oppressive kind of thought patterns, where it's like you have to be nice and you have to be chaste and all those things. It's like a rebellious attack on it. But it goes way too far into the extreme and doesn't go like, wait, hold on, that spirituality thing, let's ground it to reality and think about the value that I have as a person and how I can take that value and give it to someone else, and they can give me their value, and we create something great together, like that spiritual commitment to each other in the realist sense.
Yeah, and like that sort of materialistic, hedonistic type of sex, for example, that was the one you were going into. It just absolutely crushes your self-esteem, just because you're like, yeah. I'll just give myself to anybody. I guess I'm whatever.
Yeah. That goes into the whole thing. Like, you got the red pillars, or the PUAs, pickup artists and stuff, and they just chase women and they go for the sex, right? But you have to ask yourself, like, what do you get out of it? Or you get validation from women who essentially fell for your trickery, for your manipulative tactics, because that's what PUA is. It's you just like, they have this whole thing called negging, where you would insult a girl, or you treat her like shit, because she, like, an attractive woman usually gets a lot of attention. So by treating her like shit, she has that psychological response, like, why is this guy ignoring me? Why is this guy treating me like shit? So they chase you. That's kind of like the PUA tactic. It's dirty as hell. It's manipulative. But if a girl falls for that, that means that she has a pseudo self-esteem, because it shows that she only wants validation in the material sense. She doesn't value herself properly. While with the PUA, he's valuing himself based on the premise that he can get validation and get recognition that he's, you know, a man or whatever, based on the fact that a hot girl wants to fuck him. And what is that based off? That's based off of manipulative tactics. So you're actually lying. The entire thing is a dishonest little game. And when you have sex in that way, it's like, yay, I won, I got the bitch, game over. It's like, okay, what next? Well, get the level 50 bitch over at the club over there. It's just a stupid game of diminishing returns, because the more you do it, the more you're eroding your self-esteem and replacing it with something fake. There's no authenticity to it. But on the other hand, you build yourself up, you constantly put your standards high, and you go, I want a girl who's like this. You figure out what you want in your life. You figure out what's valuable to you. You want it because you want it. You figured out the reasons why. And then you meet a girl who is exactly like that. You get to know her, and you're constantly evaluating her, going, is she worth my time? Is she worth the value I have? You know, does she earn what I've got? Do I earn what she's got? There's a trade there, you know. And when you finally get to that point of having sex with them, it's like, this is the girl I've been looking for. There's this spiritual feeling and satisfaction and fulfillment because this person sees you for who you are, not in the physical sense, but also the spiritual sense. Because there's Nathaniel Branden actually said this in Psychology of Romantic Love. When you meet someone who you fall in love with and really love, it's psychological visibility. Because you can think of yourself, when you look in the mirror, or you look at the camera right now at yourself, you can see yourself in like a material way, but you can't see your personality. You can't see the traits you have in terms of like internal values. But when you meet someone who you fall in love with, you fall in love with them because they recognize those values. They see the values in you. So, and when you're falling in love with it because you're psychologically visible to them, right? So they're seeing you for you in that spiritualist sense, but not just in the material. It's like, oh, she's hot, but I see her for all she is. And that entails love. And when you have sex with that person, it's almost like a recognition of the values you hold and the things you worked for. It's a celebration of who you are as a person. And that's exactly what love is. And that's why it's so important to cherish. And that's why sex, you need to be selective of it. And this doesn't mean being chaste. This is like some people take this as like, oh, I gotta wait to find the perfect girl. No platonic perfection shit. It's not about being perfect. Everyone has some flaws or some negative aspects, right? But you have to look for the people who embody all the values you like. Not all of them per se, but rather complementary things as well. And you have to constantly be evaluating. You know, sometimes relationships fail, sometimes they succeed. But it's a process, and like dating people, evaluating, it teaches you not just what you like, what you don't like, but it also gives let's just dilute it down to, it gives you experience, a lot of experience to learn about yourself, to learn about what you like. And yeah, that's it. That's I went on a big diatribe on like hedonism into like proper dating and romance right there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. That was so I mean, one thing that I don't know if this is related, if this actually connects, but one thing that I just thought of when you were talking about this was this one sort of experience that I kind of have when I date a girl. It's just this feeling of like, I get my like words out there. I can like you're constantly texting, you're constantly talking to her kind of, and you like can understand yourself better in a sense, because you're constantly like talking and seeing what your own thoughts are, which I find to be interesting.
Yeah. When you're talking to someone that you like or are interested in, you're showing yourself for who you really are, and when they understand that, it's almost like you're testing the waters in a sense to evaluate whether they get you. Because an interesting observation I've noticed is when you ask people, it's like, oh, why are you with your partner? Oh, she just gets me, you know, or like, he gets me. And it's those things like, he just knows who I am. Mm-hmm. I was like, well, what does that mean? Like, does it mean like he knows like the size of your breasts? Like, I mean, is it the hedonistic side? Well, no, it's not. It's to do with, they know the partner knows who you are, and who are you exactly. That leads into core values. That leads into things like, I value honesty above everything else. I don't like liars. That's my personal, I really don't like lying. So you meet someone who embodies that, just the pure honesty and also independence, for example, or they value something like a balanced schedule in work life, because life is not just about work. Some people do that, which is fine if they really like it. But like my partner, she is really relaxed and easygoing like me. We like to travel and we like to do things together like that. And that's a deep value to me, and that's what she has. And she recognizes those things in me too. And then there are also like emotional ones, private ones, like insecurities that you might have, or oh, the lights are out again. Yeah. It's that psychological visibility aspect. So when you're talking to someone, it's like you're fishing for that. You're talking to them and working out whether they recognize you as you are, rather than like what they just see on a material level. And if you've noticed, when you talk to some people, that feeling of like, I don't really want to be around this person anymore, when they're completely opposed to your values. It's just this weird feeling of like, yeah, I think I'm done with this guy. Like, he thinks communism's valid. You can get a lot of information just from that. So that's the same thing with dating. Like, it's a fishing game in a way. It's not a game, but it's fishing for recognizing values within each other.
Yeah.
But I do recommend with texting. Like, texting isn't that good because texting is very like it lacks that emotion. It lacks the mannerisms. There's a lot in body language. There's a lot in how people act and how they look at you, which is really important. And today's day, like, we're very focused on digital things like that. It's a wonderful thing. I have no problem with it, but it's super important when you're dating, especially, to meet the person and physically get to know them, because there are so many aspects in someone's physicality that we can recognize. It's like little subconscious cues. We're like, this person, the way they walk, the way they act, that tells us a lot about who they are as a person.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I noticed, like, when you're just texting, like, with a girl, it's so tough to, like, know if she's actually interested or not, or like if you should keep pursuing it further, and you like second guess yourself quite a bit. Yeah, that's definitely the case. And shoot, there was something else I had. Shoot, I had something else I wanted to say, but I forgot now.
It's all good. You could stop me sometimes as well, because I tend to go on like really long, like speeches where it's like 80 pages long. Yeah, with the texting thing as well, there's also an individual perceptive problem as well, where, say for example, you come from like a traumatic relationship in the past, and someone's messaging you, and they would say something like, they're just kind of straightforward. They're a very straightforward person, or very frank, and they would say something like, "Oh yeah, I'm like, nah, not today. I'm busy. Not today. I'm busy." Doesn't have any actual meaning, but you assign meaning to it based on preconceived notions. So it's like, you would read that, it's like, what does she mean? Maybe she doesn't want to talk to me anymore. Maybe she's found another guy. What if this? What if that? What if this? What if that? And that turns into that rumination part and the anxiety. So that's why texting is problematic, and it's really important to not do those things. Though it's a common problem for a lot of people, including myself. Like, I am not flawless within any measure. I've done it before where like I'm in a particularly bad mood, or I've had a bad day, or I'm underslept, and I'd read something, like, what the fuck? Like, I'm just reading it like it's like some terrible disaster, but the person literally just went shopping, so yeah, it's a perceptive thing too. You got to be careful.
Yeah, it's definitely very tough to understand like what people are actually trying to say over text. And I remembered what I was going to say. One thing that I recognized in my past, at least, hopefully it doesn't continue in the future, but is just this whole idea of like, if you're talking to someone right away, like when you're still like fishing, essentially, like trying to look for somebody, you like overlook certain features and like decide, oh, whatever, I'm going to keep going anyways. And ultimately, like, I don't know, in the relationships I've been in, they've all every single like little thing that I've noticed, I tend to like, I write in a journal a lot, and I tend to like write it down and think about it, and I'm like, whatever, it's probably no big deal. But every single time it comes out later in the relationship, or something like related to that seems to come out later in the relationship. And I just think that like when there's something that turns me away early on, I can't think like, but if I give up on this, I'll never find anything else, which is the general thought that I've dealt with this, with regards to this. I just need to get away from that person, because it's better to be alone than with somebody who is going to make you miserable.
Right. Yeah, and it's also a suggestion you can do is like, if you have that feeling of like, if I break up with this person, I won't find anyone else, because this is a big one. A lot of people, you can actually examine, why do I feel that way? You can journal and explore, do some free writing on like, why do I feel like that if this person leaves me, I won't have anyone else? And you can actually deconstruct it and go down into like past conditioning from other things. You can also like figure out insecurities of your own, and that's a good way to explore yourself and to build yourself up, and then to deduce what's the right path to take. I have some very significant experiences regarding like breakups and stuff, because I had a very significant breakup a couple of years ago, and it was a very hard decision to make, but the decision was correct. It was a breakup, and it took a lot of evaluation, and it was fighting back and forth with my emotions. It's like, what if I don't find someone? And I've put so much time into the sunken cost fallacy, which is, but I've put like 10 years into it. But good way to think about it. You write down, what do I want? What do I think I have to do? Because those things are different. What do I want means, what is valuable to you? Why do I want things? Why is it valuable to me? But if you write, I have to stay in this relationship, you've assigned a duty to yourself. Why? You have to examine why you've assigned a duty of you have to stay in a relationship. And that's when you can recognize errors that you make, because we do that sometimes. We apply certain things like, I have to stay in this job because I've put like 15 years into it. It's like, but are you happy? No. Do you want to be happy? Yes. Well, which one is it? Do you have to stay in the job, or do you want to be happy? Does the job make you happy? No. Do you want it? No. But I have to be in it. Well, okay, there's your contradiction. There's a problem there. So have to and want to are really simple terms that you could use and go, well, why do I feel like I have to do this? Is there a want behind that? And is it valid? And the moment you find that it's invalid, like psychologically, you just become much clearer about what you want, and you can just cut things out time to time. It's a method of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's like breaking out of your rumination cycles. To explain cognitive behavioral therapy is like, you've got behaviors, you got thoughts, and you got feelings. It's like in a circle, right? And the way it works is that if you like, they can all reinforce each other in the sense that, say, you feel really insecure about a certain breakup or whatever. You feel really insecure about it, and so it influences your behavior to be negative, and then you act in certain ways as well, which end up being negative, and it reinforces that previous thought. Like, an easy example would be, I'm terrible at writing. I'm terrible at speaking. So you feel that you're terrible. You think that you're terrible at speaking. You start to feel bad about it, and when you act out when you try to speak, because you feel bad about it and you've conditioned yourself into thinking that you're bad at it, you do badly, because you're already in that like stressed out phase, And then when the action happens and it's a negative one, well, see, your thoughts are reinforcing it. It's like, well, see, after all, I was right. And then it just strengthens that reinforcement. Now, how do you break out of it? You actually have to challenge the thought. You have to go, okay, is there really evidence to show that I'm a bad speaker, or is it just I'm inexperienced? It's reframing it, and it's also attacking the thought directly to break the maladaptive pattern that you've created for yourself. And that refers to relationships as well. Like, it's... I feel like I have to stay in this relationship. Well, why? Attack the thought and come out with a reason for it.
Yeah, and that's basically the process of just introspection and just looking into your subconscious, see which premises you have, and attack them with rationality. That's very much a big part of objectivism, and a big part of like why I'm so attracted to the philosophy. And I guess with that speaking thing in general, that really that's really helpful to me. I think I'll probably think about that a lot more, because historically, like throughout all my life, I've been someone who has been like very much self-conscious about my speaking and feeling like I am a terrible speaker. I mean, that's the reason I got on YouTube, just to like be more comfortable with it and become more clear of a speaker. And I mean, like over time, I see myself like not thinking as much that, oh, I'm a terrible speaker, I'm so bad at talking, and I see myself just improving at the same time.
Yeah. It's important to recognize your improvements, and it's also important to attack the negative thoughts that you've assigned to yourself, because a lot of the time they're wrong. And it's like you doubt yourself and you go, okay, I feel like I'm not a good speaker, or I'm not good enough. And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to write this out. I'm going to list out, evidence for that and evidence against it. I talked about this in Dealing with Anxiety, the video on that. And you can use that as a way to attack the actual thought, and then come to a conclusion rationally and go, well, what facts of reality gave rise to this initial negative association with myself in the first place? And 90% of the time you discover that it's wrong and you can reject it. And you start to feel better psychologically, because our thoughts and the way we come up with conclusions about ourselves, a lot of it stems from our experiences in life, our conditioning and our childhood and all that stuff, especially childhood, because when you're really, really young, all you really have is just observational, like observation as a form of knowledge. You don't really have that formal logic in place yet. So what you see is what you integrate. You're a sponge. And those things can get really stuck inside you, especially for people who I'm very like sympathetic towards in terms of like traumatic experiences in their childhood, like really, really bad stuff. That stuff is a lot of work to break down. And the way you break it down is by attacking it directly. And again, requires honesty. You have to be like super honest about what you're feeling and what you're thinking, even if the thought is really bad. And just directly attacking it, providing evidence for and against, and then acting against that thought, like having the courage to go, I'm frightened of speaking because such and such happened to me in my past, but that feeling's going to stay here while I act and counteract it. Over time, the feeling goes away, but depending on the severity of the trauma, depending on the integration that you've got, it can take like a long time or a short time. It also depends on like the person's general level of like intelligence, their commitment to it as well. Commitment is a very important part. So yeah, and like you can use it. I'm glad it like gives you some insight into your own like speaking and things like that, because I go through it too. I'm sometimes like, am I a good speaker or do I ramble? And then I think it was Diego on Twitter. He's like, you're too self-critical. He's like, you're too self-critical. Stop criticizing yourself. Like, your speaking is perfect. I'm like, but is it? And like the doubt part kicked in. And I was like, wait. No, he's right. I am pretty damn good at speaking. And it was, take those little cognitive errors that we make. We have to be really careful about them. So,
yeah, and I mean that's definitely like the whole cognitive errors thing. That's so easy to do when you're just thinking about things and just letting like the thoughts accumulate. Because when you're when it's just in your mind, you don't you jump to conclusions a lot faster, because you just pull stuff from your subconscious or you make random assumptions and you don't like critically examine them necessarily when you're just thinking about it. But when you write it down on paper, you have to go through each step one by one and like justify it every single time. So when I notice when I like write down a sentence, I examine it and criticize it a lot more than when I just like think the sentence. And that's true with speaking too. I examine that sentence a lot more than when I speak it than just when I think it. So like it's absolutely key to just get your ideas down on paper or spoken or anything like that. That's externalizing your thought. That's the important part, because if you just try to solve problems just in here, there's too much going on in here, especially with big information, where it just gets tangled in a mess, and you're not externalizing it. So what happens when you externalize it is you're actually putting it in reality. You're putting it on a paper. It's a physical thing now that you can
Oh, lights. All good.
I don't know why it keeps doing that.
You're externalizing your thoughts, turning out the lights, but with speech. So when you externalize things, it becomes concrete, in a sense. It becomes something that you can physically see, and you can physically like touch on a paper and everything. So you can examine it critically on a much stronger basis, because now it's separate to you. Now the thought's on the paper, and you're like, all right, I'm going to attack the shit out of you. I'm going to make if you want to get back in here, you got to be valid. So that's kind of how it works. Like, it's a fun way to think about it. That's why I always encourage people, like, write a lot. Writing is a very powerful way of breaking down a lot of the things that you believe about yourself that may be wrong, it's a great way to just attack maladaptive patterns and also errors in thinking. It's very, very good. So it's good that you journal, because journaling just helps with clarity of thought.
For sure.
Yeah.
I started actually way back when I was religious, because all my friends were doing journals, and over time, I mean, like, I would like write down all my like negative feelings and sad feelings and stuff like that. And over time, I just realized that I kept writing sad stuff, and I was like, wait, but religion's supposed to make me happy. That was the whole reason I've been so attached to religion to begin with. So then I started like questioning that, and that led me down the road to objectivism. And since then, I actually like, there were a lot of times where I'd take long breaks from journaling, and those would be like not necessarily the best times in my life. So then I made a commitment, actually, like not this October, but 2 Octobers ago at the very end, just to write every single day. And I've been consistent with it ever since then. And like, just the amount of growth that I feel like I've had since then has been incredible.
Yeah, it's very psychologically healthy. I write almost every day. Like, I get busy at work and I have a lot of other things to do. So writing every day, not every day, but I tend to journal and kind of throw out some thoughts and like fight when I'm in a bad mood in particular. I use it to combat certain things. It's a very powerful thing to do. And I usually, when I blog, that's like I would sit down, I would just start writing. It's everything that I write is basically just a first revision. I never really revise it. I just throw it out and that's it. But it's a build-up of energy for me. It's like I'm thinking of stuff and I'm coming up with ideas and I'm like making sure all my formulations are right. And then suddenly I just explode and throw it out onto the paper and then let it out. So it's just a clean way of doing things, for me anyway. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, if you look at my journal, there's a lot of like little sentences or little like tidbits for it. Because like some days I won't have much that I want to say, and then other days you'll just see like a 2-page long ass essay about something, and sometimes you'll see like little diagrams in there, because I just get like very like, there's days when I just feel inspired just to get a bunch of stuff down that I've been thinking about.
Yeah. And it's fun reflecting on old journal entries, because you can see how much you've grown.
Yeah.
That's a really great way to cement yourself in the present and be like, wow, I used to be like this, but right now I'm like way up here, you know? And if I keep doing this, I'm going to keep going up. It's a really great way to inspire yourself and to remotivate.
It's absolutely so good to document growth. Just like, I mean, I do a lot of like sports stuff, like rock climbing, biking I already talked about, and lifting, and it's just nice to like look back and just see like, oh, I've grown this much, and you just see like that you keep going up. Because when you like don't have good ways to measure that, there's a lot of times when it's like, am I actually improving? And that's such a negative thought that leads to so much bad psychology.
Yeah, when I was doing lifting, I don't go to the gym anymore, I just do calisthenics now. But when I was lifting, I didn't journal, but I did take like progress photos. Like every month I would check in on my like health and vitals and all that. And that really helped kind of keep me going to get to like where I wanted to be and not to stop. So yeah, journaling and progress in those ways, it allows you to recognize your own productivity, so you can take pride in it, so you can keep going. But if you don't do it, it's just in here. It's like, I mean, yeah, like 6 months ago I started lifting and I've made some progress, but am I really making progress? And you start to like doubt yourself in that way.
That's absolutely true. Because it just gets lost in that fog of just self-doubt, and whatever's going on in your head. You don't.
Yeah.
It's so like there's so much like I don't know, when you think something, it's so much foggier than when it's like out.
Yeah, and a lot of that fog isn't necessarily just from you, it's also just from things we perceive. It's like the percepts we take in, and it's not conscious things, it's just things in our awareness. Like, you would go around and talk to people and, oh man, these people are just like so self-doubtful, and you just hear the constant negativity on TV and how the world's doomed and this and this and this, and you're like, nah, no interest to me. But you still do hear it, and your brain registers that information, and it might manifest itself in certain ways where it's like, oh well, you start doubting yourself in a subtle way. So it's like, hold on, why am I doubting myself? So you got to journal and you got to externalize it. It's like a detox in a way for the brain.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely like a very, very, very good thing to do. I can't think of anything.
It's good stuff.
Do you have any topics you want to talk about? I can't think of anything else.
Not particularly, no. Like, I think we're good to leave it there, I guess.
Yeah,
what time is it, actually?
We got a lot of good stuff. 7 here.
Yeah, so it's 10. So we've been talking for 2 hours. I think that's a good place to leave it. Yeah. I think you got to go get dinner now.
I probably will. I actually have I have like a club type meeting that I'm going to. But you got a whole day ahead of you. Wow.
I do have a whole day. What am I doing today? I'm waiting for a delivery, and then after that, I don't know. I have to do some rehabilitation for my shoulder because I think I have like bicep tendonitis or rotator cuff, so I got to do work on that, and then I'm gonna work on trying to edit this and make sure to get it uploaded. And I don't know.
I'm probably gonna link the 2 videos I got. Probably cut out like that little bit when it paused and see if I can upload it, because my software takes so long to like once I link 2 videos together, it just takes forever to like upload back to my like computer, which is really weird. I don't get why it takes that long, especially for these longer videos.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a lot of processing. I mean, I'm running a gaming PC, so I've got enough power to get things done pretty quick. But if you're running on a laptop, the heat ups and the thresholds that it hits, because when the CPU heats up, threshold lowers the clock rates, everything goes slow.
We'll see when. This might not get uploaded till tomorrow either. We'll see if I have time tonight.
Yep.
But yeah, it was nice talking to you, man. I'll probably stop the recording right now. So thank you all for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.